it out to the state.
Yes. So it didn't make any sense. And what I could see then, I sort of stood outside of that, and then I could see myself going down the same road. So then I got angry. I got very angry. I suppose I was going through the stages of what are they associated with death. There's 7 stages of, I don't know what they call it. But I went through it, then I started getting angry. And then I started reacting to the bank and the bank managers. And this is going back to, say, November, December, probably January of last year. And I got quite aggressive with some of them, and they were phoning me up, and I was phoning them back. And I told them at that stage they weren't going to get anything off me. I wasn't going to give them any more financial information, in summary. And I just didn't want to have anything to do with them. And I actually said to one bank manager, well, if you're trying to help me, why don't you come down and help us manage these properties? I'll take your job for a while. I'll go in and manage what you're doing, and I'll work with people. And I tell you what, I can do a better job, because the way you're treating me, I wouldn't treat a dog like that. So that's the sort of relationships that started building between me and the bank managers. And there's all talk of, if you come here, I'll do this, and if you, the usual stuff that comes out with anger. So anyway, what happened then was a friend of I was writing. I find writing is a sort of a catharsis for me. I can vent a lot of anger and frustration through sitting down and writing, and it also helps me sort of logically understand what's happening. So I began then by writing stuff, thinking, what's going on? I can write this down. I started writing emails to people about, what I've been through in the bank, what they've done to me, and I suppose I was looking for a kind of empathy or a kind of sympathy as well, or I wanted to share the information with people at the very least. And a friend of mine from Belfast, Jim, he picked up on the emails and he realized, wow, what's happening here? So he realized that I wasn't in a good place. I was angry, I was depressed, I was mentally quite unstable in myself at that time. And he called me up and he said, Darrel, why don't you come up here to Belfast and we'll have a chat and we'll go through some stuff and we might be able to teach you something that might be able to help you, given that the financial struggle that you're having. Now, at this stage, as I said, come December of 2009, January 2010, we had nothing. There was very little revenue coming in, and most of which was still being eaten up by the bank. Some of it we were keeping ourselves. So I went up to Belfast anyway to Jim, and I spent 2 days up there learning to write and understand a little bit about the law. And at this stage even, I didn't understand the fractional reserve banking system. I didn't understand the money stuff, what was happening. And it didn't make any sense what Jim was saying and what the other guys were saying. He brought over a guy from the UK to show us this stuff. And it was basically all about getting the knowledge of contract law and then understanding how to put together a legally framed letter. And I say legally framed because, again, I'm not up on legalese, and I don't really want to be either.
Sure.
But it seemed to be very legally framed or legally constructed. All the right words seemed to be in the right places, as far as I could tell anyway. Uh-huh. So what happened then? I went up there for 2 days. We sat down. We studied this stuff quite intensely. We began to understand the law. Then they started explaining the money system, the debt system. And although the information went into my head, I didn't believe it. I have to say, I just didn't believe it. I didn't accept it.
What particularly did you not believe?
That money was created out of nothing. It was created in fraud. I thought there must be something. They have.
You felt it was created in fraud, or you actually believe it's created in fraud?
At the time, I didn't believe it was created in fraud, even though I was being told this information.
Right, because you see, I don't believe the money is created in fraud. The only fraudulent part of the whole thing, as far as I can tell, is the interest.
Right, okay.
A debt-based currency, per se, is not a problem. I mean, all currencies are debt-based, regardless. Yeah. Even gold is a debt-based currency.
Okay, yeah.
The idea of, well, I owe you this, or this is a method or a means of exchange. There's a debt associated with it till the transactions are all complete, and then the debts are erased.
Okay. Yeah, well, okay, I understand that, what you're saying. So, I suppose what I didn't accept was that it was possible then to legally challenge any of this stuff, to legally ask. I didn't think you should be or could be asking questions like that of a bank, like provide a contract.
Okay,
where's the contract?
Would it be fair to say that you are now on the other side of the fence, whereas one side of the fence you basically thought you had no option other than to just put your entire or all value that you believe you had collected, you had no option but to give it to them. And now you saw, well, options.
Yeah, I saw options, and do you know what? I sort of, for the first time in an awful long time in the whole process of my own life, I put a little bit of faith in something. Mm-hmm. Because psychologically, I've trained myself, and I've been conditioned, I suppose, as well, to not put faith in anything, actually do stuff or don't do stuff, do or don't do. And I didn't believe that this was going to work by writing letters. And in effect, it kind of hasn't either. But what it has done for me is taught me an awful lot. Now, I'll qualify what I say by saying it probably hasn't worked either. But it's the whole process of writing letters got me to a place where I was at least then willing to start studying this stuff in more depth and try to get a better understanding, because I don't like writing letters, and I don't like writing stuff down unless I understand it very well. So I had to take a leap of faith that if I wrote a letter legally challenging the bank, that it might have some positive outcome. And as you say, at least then at that stage I perceived, well, there might be some other options here other than just going into the corner and taking a hammering every time the bank chose to hammer me. Okay, because that's why I was coming out fighting, because I perceived I was in this corner and I had nowhere to turn, and every time the bank turned to want something off me, I started fighting with them. So I then realized, okay, I could be fighting with them, and I could continue fighting with them. I could continue to try and work with them and fight with them. And now here's a third option, that I could actually say, well, what right have you got, legally speaking or lawfully speaking?
Would you say you came across and found the power of questions? The
power of questions. That's very good. You're very good, Vin, I have to say. I found the power of questions. Excellent. So that's what it was, literally, Vin. It was a set of questions. That's all it was. And I honestly didn't know the answers to those questions, even though people had told me the answer is such and such and such and such. But I didn't believe them. I didn't believe the answers were such and such and such and such. But they did say, well, look, at least ask the questions. And a good friend of both of ours, I quote her, I won't mention her name, but she said to me one day, well, if you can't ask questions, you're lost. You've lost already. You're gone. Mm-hmm. That's, I think Iru said that. And she was right, 100% right. If you're not in a place where you can't ask questions, you're gone. You're finished. It's a fundamental, basic thing for any man to be able to do.
Well, that's what the human mind
does.
Away
from you.
Yep.
So the questions. Will we go on to the questions? Or is there any other specific information you want to ask me about that period?
Well, I wanted to go back a bit, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
When you were talking about your legacy, for example, obviously back then you hadn't even worked out where this supposed legacy was coming from. In other words, that because you were in the property market and property business, that the others who were coming in and doing all this leasing and purchasing and renting from you, that your legacy was actually basically going to be what you considered an investment of your time, even though it was really drawing from the time, effort, and energy of others to provide you with a legacy. You hadn't kind of questioned that either, I take it.
Correct, absolutely. Right. Again, and I'm glad you said that, because I don't want people to come think, well, Darrel now, he's all holier than thou and all that. I'm not. Because I come from a place where I was acting in commerce. And I didn't give a second thought to the fact of, well, this legacy was going to come from the efforts and energy of other people. I have to say, that's the way I was. Not to say I'm like that now, but that's the way I was, definitely. If that's the question you were asking me, Vin, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, look, just to be straight with people, I've come from the place where I perceived that my legacy was going to come from somewhere. I hadn't given it much thought, and I now know that ultimately it would have come from the energy of other people, other men and women,
who in
because
turn
they're renting.
We're going to have to do exactly the same thing to other people to get their own legacy.
Yes, exactly. So that's fine. I was part of that machine.
Yeah.
And so be it. That's the way it was.
But you see, do you think? Well, you see, I think that's an important aspect for everybody to realise, that until we actually realise that we're actually involved in a race to the bottom.
Yeah.
And the only way to win, inverted commas, is to hack and slash at your brothers and sisters around you.
Yeah.
And to take from as many as you can unto yourself, and to leave them with nothing, and let them be the sacrifice, if you will, at the end.
Competition.
Yeah.
Competition. What was it? We discussed this before about Darwin.
Uh-huh.
It's not. He never, as far as I know, anyway, as far as I understand, he didn't come up with that phrase "survival of the fittest."
No.
What was it he came up with? It was quite the opposite, was it? Natural selection.
Yes.
That's what he came up with, and somebody has used that. I think it was the guy that was trying to force him to publish his book came up with survival of the fittest, whereas Darwin talked about natural selection, which is what nature is all about properly. Survival of the fittest is what you're talking about there, competition, slash and burn to the detriment of somebody else.
Bite, claw, scratch, scrape. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not what Darwin was even talking about. Anyway, look, we won't go on to Darwin too much. I don't know enough about him anyway to talk about him. So, where were we? Sorry, did you have another question there, Vin? Because I'm sure it'd be a good one.
Well, I was wondering when the radio career started, but that a little later.
Yeah, it was. Right, okay. Right, I'll try and sort of retrace my steps. Back in... Yeah, okay, I sort of have it now. Okay, so we were in December of 2009, January 2010, and I was actually at that stage, I was not well in my head, and I was actually contemplating, whether or not I wanted to hang around this world. You can say the words, I don't want to say it at the moment.
I know what you mean.
But you know what I mean, hanging around, I didn't want to, I was actually considering not hanging around and leaving it all behind physically. And that doesn't mean going off on a holiday either, a permanent holiday, but like so. And I understand now, there's a lot of people out there at the moment, and this is why I do mention the S word. You can mention it, you can say it, Vin. I don't want to say it, but we'll say, if you say it, it's a recognition that there are other people out there in that situation, and there isn't a need to be. It's easy
Absolutely
for me to
not.
say that now. Sorry, go on.
Absolutely not. Well, I'd like to say that very clearly, that if anybody who is listening to this, who does feel that they are under immense pressure financially or otherwise, to come and have a chat with the guys on TNS Radio, .ning.com, and you will find there is information there that will, I think, help.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on that, Darrel? With the guys that are there, I mean, the guys that are there are great guys. They've all been through at some stage or another, and there is support and help available to you.
Well, look, I actually think that there's far more men and women, include women and men in this,
Absolutely.
that have been through this and are going through it than we perceive. And there isn't a need. And there are people like me and Vin and many, many others on the TNS site and others aside that will actually lend an ear to what you have to say, and they will understand. I understand it. I understand where people are coming from with this, because I've been there, and I was contemplating the alternative, the real alternative. And I think in the end I just bottled it. But also to say that as well, I think that I was also helped quite a bit luckily enough, by one or two friends and one or two members of my family. And I was very fortunate in that respect that those people were there, despite the fact that I was acting like an ass, despite the fact that I was quite aggressive and abusive of people. I turned on quite a few people. And despite all that, they were still there, and I knew it. And in the end, I decided not to do the ultimate, because I felt, well, I'm not going to leave a good legacy behind. It might have been a cop-out as well, but I didn't feel it was going to better anybody by me, finishing my life.